Trapped in a Beach Villa Part 2. Chapter 7. A Dangerous Game. The storm showed no sign of letting up. By midnight, the villa felt like a world unto itself, sealed off by pounding rain and heaving seas. Thunder rumbled so deeply it made the glass doors shiver, while lightning painted quicksilver streaks across the white marble floors. Inside, Adrian lit a fire in the sitting room. Not for warmth, the air was still heavy with humidity, but for light, for atmosphere. The flames licked up the black stone hearth, throwing golden shadows across his face, sharpening the angles of his cheekbones, catching in his amber-flecked eyes. Isabel lingered near the bookshelves, pretending to examine the rows of leather-bound volumes while sneaking glances at him. He was pouring himself another measure of scotch, movements measured, precise. Always so controlled. "You're restless," he said, not looking up. She stiffened. "I'm fine. You've been pacing." He set the glass down. "You don't like storms." Her jaw tightened. "What gave you that idea?" "The way you keep pretending to be busy when you're not." He finally met her gaze, one brow lifted. "You need a distraction." The words sent a prickle down her spine. "And you're volunteering." A flicker of something, amusement, maybe, ghosted over his mouth. He gestured toward the small card table near the fire. "Poker." Isabel blinked. "Poker. Unless you prefer chess." She crossed her arms. "What's the point?" "Something to pass the time." He paused, eyes narrowing just slightly. "And to make things interesting, we'll play for a prize." Suspicion bloomed in her chest. "What kind of prize?" Adrian leaned back in his chair, the firelight glinting on his watch. "The master bedroom." Her breath caught. "You can't be serious." "Deadly serious." "Winner takes the master suite. Loser sleeps in the guest room." His gaze locked onto hers. "Unless you're afraid to lose." Heat rushed to her cheeks. "I'm not afraid." "Good." He gestured again to the table. "Then sit." The cards were already stacked neatly in their case, poker chips arranged with military precision. Adrian dealt with the ease of someone who had played 1,000 hands before, his long fingers moving with calm certainty. Isabel sat stiffly across from him, her blanket wrapped around her shoulders like armor. The first few rounds passed quickly, her inexperience obvious. But stubbornness kept her focused, and soon enough she was catching his rhythm, watching the way his eyes flickered, the way his mouth tightened when he bluffed. The storm outside roared louder, thunder shaking the villa's bones, but Isabel hardly noticed anymore. Her whole world had narrowed to the flick of cards and the man across from her. "You're improving," Adrian said quietly as she raked in her first small pile of chips. "Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not." "You're stubborn." The compliment, if it was one, made her pulse skip. By the final hand, the pile of chips was even. The tension at the table matched the storm outside. Isabel leaned forward, biting her lip, eyes darting between her cards and Adrian's unreadable face. "All in," he said softly, sliding his chips forward. Her stomach flipped. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Her pulse thundered in her ears. She shoved her own chips into the pot. "Call." He turned his cards over slowly. A straight flush. Her breath caught. "No," she slapped her cards down, "two pair." "Useless." Adrian leaned back, victorious but not smug, his expression calm as ever. "Master suite is mine." She stared at him, heat rushing to her face. You cheated. No. You had to. That hand was. He leaned in then, across the table, the firelight catching the drops of scotch still glistening on his glass. His voice was low, velvet and dangerous. I never cheat, Isabel. The words curled around her name like a promise. Or a warning. Her breath stuttered. She pushed back from the table, standing too quickly. Fine. Enjoy your room. She turned on her heel and walked away, her heart pounding so loudly she swore it echoed louder than the thunder. That night, in her smaller guest room, the sheets cool and impersonal around her, Isabel lay awake. Not because of the storm. Not because of the loss. Because of the way he had said it. Because of the way her name had sounded in his mouth. And no matter how she tried, she couldn't sleep. Chapter 8 The Ex Calls. The storm had finally loosened its grip by morning. The rain had softened to a drizzle, and the Caribbean stretched out in bruised shades of silver and blue, restless but calmer than the night before. The villa smelled faintly of salt and damp marble, the air thick with humidity. Isabel sat curled up on the sofa in the living room, her phone clutched between her hands. The storm hadn't been the reason she hadn't slept. It was Adrian. His voice. That low, deliberate whisper, I never cheat, Isabel. The sound had followed her into dreams and woken her more than once. She was just about to scroll aimlessly through travel blogs when her phone buzzed in her hands. The screen lit with a name she hadn't seen in weeks. Daniel. Her chest tightened. For a moment she considered letting it ring, letting the call die the way he had let their relationship die, cold, careless, like throwing a glass onto stone and walking away. But her thumb betrayed her. She swiped. Daniel. His voice spilled down the line, smooth as always, that practiced charm that had once made her weak. Isabel. Thank God you picked up. I've been thinking about you. Her breath caught. Why? I miss you. His tone was soft, urgent. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have left things the way I did. I was scared. The words blurred, tumbling too quickly, too polished. A script he'd probably rehearsed. Isabel pressed her fingers to her temple, her chest aching with both longing and fury. Daniel, don't. A sound interrupted her. A shift of weight against the marble floor. She looked up. Adrian stood near the glass doors, broad shoulders backlit by pale morning light, his amber eyes locked on her like a hawk's. He had heard. Her throat went dry. Daniel's voice kept flowing through the phone, desperate now. Just hear me out. I know I screwed up, but you're different from everyone else, Isabel. You always grounded me. You. Adrian's voice cut through, deep and certain. He misses control, not you. Isabel froze. The words slammed into her chest harder than the storm's thunder had the night before. Her grip tightened on the phone, Daniel's voice suddenly meaningless in her ear. She dropped it to her lap, staring at Adrian. You don't get to say that, she snapped, her voice trembling. It's the truth. Her pulse thudded. You don't know our relationship. I know my brother, Adrian said, his tone low but razor sharp. And I know the difference between missing someone and missing the power they gave you. Don't mistake one for the other. The heat in her face rose so quickly she felt dizzy. Her voice cracked when she spoke. Stop it. Just stop. You don't get to stand there and judge me, like you're some kind of oracle. You're not. For the first time, something flickered across Adrian's face, not anger, not smugness. Something else. Disappointment. Regret. But he said nothing. He turned on his heel, his footsteps echoing as he left the room. His retreat was deliberate, controlled, but there was a tightness in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. Isabel sat there, phone still buzzing faintly with Daniel's voice on the other end until the call dropped into silence. Her chest felt raw, her eyes burning. She wanted to scream. Or cry. Or both. Instead, she stood abruptly and stormed back to her room, slamming the door behind her. She found the flowers hours later. A bouquet of white lilies, left on the floor just outside her door. No card. No note. The stems were wrapped in silk ribbon, dew still clinging to the petals. She stared at them, her throat tightening. It wasn't Daniel. It couldn't be. Which meant it was Adrian. And that truth, silent, wordless, contradictory, unsettled her more than any storm could. Chapter 9: The Mistake. By morning, the storm had finally loosened its grip. The clouds tore themselves open, letting sunlight spill across the horizon, pale at first, then fierce and golden. The Caribbean glittered again, its fury from the night before transformed into a glassy expanse that stretched endlessly toward the sky. The villa breathed differently in the calm, windows thrown open, curtains lifting in the breeze, the marble warmed by daylight. Isabel stood on the terrace in her swimsuit, her toes curling against the warm stone as she gazed out over the infinity pool. The surface was flawless, reflecting the sky in shimmering ripples. Beyond it, the ocean sang in a calmer voice, waves brushing the shore instead of attacking it. She needed this. Silence. Sun. A chance to forget the flowers left at her door, the phone call, the brutal truth Adrian had flung at her like a blade. She lowered herself onto a lounge chair, sliding her sunglasses down her nose, tilting her face toward the warmth. For a moment, she allowed herself to exhale. The splash came a heartbeat later. She turned her head. Adrian. He moved through the pool with steady precision, cutting across the turquoise water like a creature built for it. His dark hair slicked back, droplets clinging to his jaw, he swam without wasted movement, controlled, powerful, utterly unbothered by her presence. Isabel's throat tightened. She shifted on her chair, determined to look away. But the villa was too small, the pool too close. His existence pressed in on her no matter where she turned. They didn't speak. She read a book she couldn't focus on. He swam laps with mechanical rhythm. The silence between them was alive, as though the storm hadn't passed but simply moved inside, crouching between them with every heartbeat. When he finally emerged from the water, he didn't glance at her. He reached for a towel, running it across his shoulders, his chest, his arms, the lines of muscle shifting beneath his skin. Isabel's eyes betrayed her, lingering too long, and when he finally lifted his head, his gaze caught hers. A flicker. Just a moment. But it was enough. She looked away sharply, her cheeks burning beneath the sun. That night, the villa glowed with lanterns. The staff had retreated early, leaving the house hushed except for the low hum of waves. Isabel padded barefoot across the marble floors, restless, unable to sleep. She found herself on the terrace again. The night was warm, salted with ocean air. The sea shimmered with moonlight, soft and endless. Adrian was already there. He leaned against the railing, a glass in his hand, the glow from inside tracing the hard lines of his shoulders. He didn't turn as she approached. Didn't speak. But he didn't leave either. She stood beside him, a few feet away, her arms folded across her chest. The silence pressed in, heavy. Finally, she whispered, "Why did you leave the flowers?" His head turned, just enough to meet her eyes. His voice was quiet, even. "Because you needed them." Her breath caught. Something inside her cracked, sharp and sudden. A week of storms, of silence, of brutal truths and unspoken things crashed together all at once. And before she knew it, she was moving closer. Or maybe he was. She couldn't tell who reached first. But suddenly his hand was at her jaw, his breath warm against her skin, and her lips found his. The kiss wasn't careful. It wasn't planned. It was a breaking point, heat and hunger and everything they had both been denying since the moment she'd walked into the villa. Her hands curled into his shirt. His arm slid around her waist, pulling her closer. The sea roared beneath them, the villa holding its breath. And when they finally pulled apart, her chest heaved, her lips trembling, her heart slamming against her ribs. "This is a mistake," she whispered, her voice shaking. Adrian's eyes burned in the dim light. "Then why does it feel inevitable?" Neither moved away. And the night carried them further than either of them had ever intended to go. Chapter 10. The morning after. The sun woke her first. Golden light spilled through the sheer curtains, catching on the marble floor, the white linens, the mirrored wardrobe across the room. It was soft at first, warm against her cheek, but then it sharpened, a brightness that forced her to blink awake. For a brief, blissful second, Isabel lay still in the tangle of sheets, her body heavy, her lips tingling faintly with the echo of last night's kiss. She let the images flicker across her mind, the salt-wet taste of the air, Adrian's hand firm at her waist, the sound of his breath breaking against hers. It felt unreal. Like a dream she shouldn't have touched. Her hand slid across the sheets automatically, searching, and met only cool linen. She froze. Her eyes flew open. The bed beside her was empty, smooth, untouched as though no one had been there at all. Her stomach dropped. Pushing herself upright, she scanned the room, the chair by the window, the door to the terrace, the folded blanket on the armrest. Empty. Silent. Adrian was gone. Her pulse quickened, the rush of confusion and hurt chasing the warmth of the memory away. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, standing quickly, her bare feet cool against the marble. It was only then she noticed the slip of paper on the nightstand. Her throat tightened as she reached for it. The handwriting was bold, precise. "Going into town. You should sleep in." That was all. No flourish. No explanation. No trace of what had happened between them only hours before. Her chest squeezed painfully. She sank back onto the edge of the bed, the note trembling in her hand. Was that it? Just a night? A distraction? A mistake to him? Her mind raced with possibilities. Maybe he had regretted it. Maybe he had meant for it to happen but nothing more. Maybe he had already moved it into a box in his mind labeled done. The silence of the villa pressed in on her. Outside, the sea glittered with post-storm brilliance, the waves calmer now, turquoise and white. The bougainvillea swayed in the breeze. It should have been beautiful, the kind of morning she had booked this trip for. But Isabel couldn't see any of it. All she could see was the absence of him. She dropped the note back on the nightstand, the words staring up at her, sharp as a dismissal. Her chest ached with the unfairness of it. He had touched her like she mattered. He had kissed her like it wasn't a mistake at all. And now? Gone into town. She buried her face in her hands, shame curling through her stomach. How had she let herself believe, even for a second, that Adrian Rivera, controlled, untouchable, the coldest man she'd ever known, might have meant something by it? Her phone buzzed faintly on the dresser. A notification. She ignored it. She couldn't handle Daniel's ghost or her friend's questions right now. What she wanted was clarity. And she didn't have it. Instead, she only had the taste of his kiss lingering on her lips and a note that might as well have been written on ice. Chapter 11: The Departure Plan. The announcement came over breakfast. The staff had set the dining terrace as though nothing had happened, crisp white linens, a bowl of papaya and pineapple glistening with morning dew, a carafe of orange juice sweating lightly in the heat. The storm had passed, leaving the air fresh and heavy with the perfume of damp earth and hibiscus. Sunlight shimmered off the infinity pool, dazzling. Isabel sat at the far end of the table, pushing fruit around her plate, her appetite ruined by the knot in her stomach. She hadn't seen Adrian since last night. The note still sat folded on her nightstand like a wound. He appeared just as the staff poured coffee. Crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled, trousers pressed, his watch catching the light. His presence filled the terrace immediately, cool and composed, like the storm hadn't touched him at all. "Flights are open again," he said, his voice low, steady, more announcement than conversation. Isabel's fork froze midway to her lips. "What?" "Cancún Airport has resumed service. Limited schedule, but enough." He sat across from her, sliding a black leather portfolio onto the table. "Always business, even here. I'll be on the first flight out." The words hit like ice water down her spine. She forced her fork down, the clink against porcelain sharper than she meant. "So you're leaving?" His gaze lifted from the coffee cup he was pouring. "Yes." The silence pressed between them, heavier than thunder. Her chest ached. "Leaving? After last night? After that kiss? After the way his hands had held her like she wasn't disposable, like she mattered? Now he was just gone. Again." "Of course," she said tightly, her voice brittle. "Why wouldn't you? That's what Riveras do, isn't it? Leave." His jaw twitched, but his expression didn't break. "This villa is no place for you to hide, Isabel. Better you go back to your life." Her pulse stuttered. "Better for me or better for you?" Adrian said nothing. He sipped his coffee instead, calm, deliberate, as though her words hadn't been sharp enough to cut. Heat stung her eyes. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the stone floor. "Fine. Then I'll leave too. Today. You don't need to rush." "Yes, I do," she snapped, cutting him off. "I don't want to stay in your villa one more minute." For a moment, they just stared at each other, his gaze unreadable, hers burning with hurt. Then she turned on her heel and strode back into the villa, her heartbeat loud in her ears. She packed furiously, dragging her suitcase out from under the bed. Dresses, swimsuits, cover-ups, folded carelessly, shoved between sandals and tangled jewelry. Her hands shook with every shirt she stuffed inside, not from anger alone but from the sharp ache threading through her chest. She told herself she didn't care. That last night had been nothing. That Adrian Rivera could leave this villa, this country, this world for all she cared, and she wouldn't look back. But the truth was harder. Every time she pushed another item into the suitcase, she remembered his hand against her jaw, his voice whispering low in the dark, the way his mouth had found hers like it had been waiting. She stopped suddenly, pressing her palms flat against the pile of clothes, her throat tight. "Don't be stupid," she whispered to herself. But her heart ached anyway. Outside, the villa sparkled, glass and marble and tropical bloom, perfect as ever. But to Isabel it all felt hollow now. Too polished. Too beautiful. A paradise that had betrayed her. Because what good was a paradise when you were alone in it? Chapter 12. Two blue lines. The city had never felt so loud. Back in Los Angeles, Isabel tried to throw herself into the rhythms of her old life, the traffic snarling outside her apartment window, the sharp chatter of phone calls from friends who thought a girls' night out would fix everything, the endless tide of emails from a job she suddenly couldn't care about. But none of it felt the same. Not after the villa. Not after Adrian. The images clung to her like salt on skin, the sea glittering under moonlight, the warmth of his mouth against hers, the way her name had sounded when he said it low, almost dangerous. She shoved those memories down as hard as she could. But her body wasn't cooperating. It started small. A skipped breakfast here, a strange queasiness there. She told herself it was jet lag. Too much champagne at a friend's rooftop dinner. Nerves. But the nausea grew sharper. By the second week back, even the smell of coffee turned her stomach, and she found herself bolting out of morning meetings to sit pale-faced in the restroom. She hadn't cried in days, but when a barista handed her the wrong latte, she nearly broke down in line. It didn't make sense. Except it did. The thought kept creeping in, whispering at the edges of her mind, a thought she shoved away every time it tried to take shape. Until the morning she woke before dawn, hand pressed flat against her stomach, and knew she couldn't avoid it anymore. She went to the pharmacy on the corner, sunglasses on, hood pulled low, as though pregnancy tests were contraband. Her fingers shook as she handed the box to the cashier, her cheeks hot even though the woman didn't look twice. Back in her apartment, the bathroom tiles felt cold under her feet. The air was still, too quiet, every sound amplified, the crinkle of the plastic wrapper, the faint drip of the faucet, the pounding of her pulse in her ears. She set the first test on the counter, staring at it like it might bite. It's just to rule it out. Just to quiet your nerves. She did what she had to. Then she placed it face down, hands trembling, and forced herself to step away. She paced the tiny bathroom, counting seconds. Her reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar, pale, hair tangled, eyes wide with the kind of fear she didn't want to name. When the timer on her phone buzzed, she froze. Slowly, she turned the test over. 2 lines. Blue. Bold. Unmistakable. Her knees almost gave out. She sank onto the edge of the tub, staring at it, her throat tight, breath shallow. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, no, no." Her hands trembled so hard she nearly dropped it. She grabbed the second test from the box, desperate. False positives happen. It could be wrong. Minutes later, the second test confirmed it. 2 lines. She pressed both into her palm, holding them so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her eyes stung. There was no question. Adrian. Her mind reeled, dragging her back to the villa, to that night, to the storm and the silence and the inevitability of it. Her chest ached, her stomach twisted. Her life had changed. And nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 13. The Decision. The 2 blue lines sat on the counter like a sentence carved in stone. By the next morning, Isabel had stuffed the tests back into the pharmacy bag, knotted it twice, and shoved it deep into the trash bin under her kitchen sink. Out of sight. Out of reach. But not out of mind. The image burned behind her eyelids every time she closed her eyes. She told no one. When her phone buzzed, her best friend MIA's name flashing across the screen, Isabel let it go to voicemail. She couldn't handle the inevitable chatter, "Come out tonight, you need distraction," or "Forget Daniel, let's get margaritas." Isabel's voice would crack if she tried to play along. Her mother called, too, from back east, her voicemail chipper and nosy all at once. "Sweetheart, are you eating? You sound thin on FaceTime. Call me back." Isabel pressed her phone face down on the counter, her chest tightening. She couldn't tell her mother either, not yet. And Adrian. She laughed bitterly at the thought, though the sound caught in her throat. Adrian was the last person she could tell. The man who had walked away from her in the villa without a word, who had left her with nothing but a cold note and a colder silence. The man who had kissed her like she was the only woman in the world, and then boarded a plane the next morning. What would he even say if she called him now? Would he believe her? Would he care? The questions spun endlessly, dragging her deeper into uncertainty. Days blurred into weeks. She went to work. She answered emails. She smiled when she had to. But underneath, everything felt surreal, like she was living in 2 realities at once. In one, she was Isabel, the girl with a small apartment in LA, the girl her friends knew, the girl who went to Pilates and pretended she was fine. In the other, she was carrying Adrian Rivera's child. The weight of it pressed on her even in small moments. When she reached for coffee in the morning and gagged at the smell. When she caught herself holding her stomach absent-mindedly in the elevator. When she stood in front of her closet and realized half her dresses felt suddenly too tight. She didn't tell MIA. She didn't tell her mother. She didn't tell Adrian. The secret grew heavier with every passing day. One night, unable to sleep, she stood by her bedroom window, staring out over the city. The streets glittered below, headlights snaking along the boulevard, neon signs flickering in pink and gold. Her reflection in the glass stared back at her, pale, tense, a woman she barely recognized. She pressed a hand flat against her stomach. A whisper left her lips before she could stop it. "What do I do?" The silence offered no answer. Only the faint hum of traffic below. Isabel closed her eyes, leaning her forehead against the cool glass. She didn't know if she was ready to be a mother. She didn't know if she could raise a child alone. She didn't know if Adrian, cold, untouchable Adrian, would want anything to do with this. But she knew one thing. She wasn't ready to tell anyone. Not yet. For now, the secret was hers alone. And it was already changing everything. That's the end of this part, but trust me, the next one is even more thrilling. We drop fresh episodes every day, so don't miss out. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned, you won't want to miss what's coming next.
Thanks for listening to Billionaire Romance Stories, where love meets luxury in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. We love hearing your favorite twists and favorite theories. And don't forget to ring that bell, because in this world of yachts, secrets, and luxurious romance, the next story is always one click away.